All right. Greetings and welcome back once again. This is Amuna, and I pray everybody's doing well. All praise be to the Creator for another day of life. There was something that I wanted to go into. I found a reading of the secret relationship between blacks. But then I thought to myself, I wanted to back up a little bit. I wanted to back up because there's some questions that need answering before we get to that point. It's easy to, deny things or make people to feel as though they don't know what they're talking about if we don't have context. Sometimes you'll be like, oh man, I didn't know that. And that frames the whole conversation, and then this is where misunderstandings come in. So given that it just passed not too long ago, Columbus Day, and oftentimes, it's framed in respect to the Native American Indians and what happened on that level. But I wanted to rewind the tape a little bit. And let's read some articles about who Columbus was according to history, because from there we can understand that relationship that the nation of the nation of Islam was alluding to or directly pointing to, right? So we're going to write a few articles here and then we'll just go from there, shall we? So this is kind of like a Lev Project extension. If you don't know about the Lev Project, check out the playlist on the channel. So without further ado, let me go ahead and share my screen here. For those who just joined us, welcome to the conversation. We're going to go over some stuff here. Let's start with this article. Hold on one second. Y'all already know me. There's like a million tabs open. And I'm trying not to make it go too long. Let me pull this screen back here. Come on, screen. Be nice. Be nice. I'm an old school mouse type of person. This new click and drag thing is most annoying to me because it doesn't do what I want it to do. Oh, here we are. All right. So let's just take a look. I'm just going to make it full screen. Let me know if I can be heard. What's going on, Judah? Let me know if I could be heard loud and clear. And so we're going to read a few articles, right? And then we'll just discuss from there. And then we're just going to use it as a building block for another day, right? So let's see where I'm at here. Okay, so this was Huffington Post, okay? And this was back in 2012, okay? Christopher Columbus, Jewish roots examined by historians. Columbus, Jewish roots examined. Why is Columbus important? I mean, 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue. But we should be asking Columbus, where you coming from, bruh? What was the problem? What you running from me? Over 5 centuries after the famed explorer's death, historians are taking a fresh look at what motivated. That's what we want to know. You know what I mean? CC, Christopher Columbus, what motivated him to make his voyage across the Atlantic, and how his faith may have played into those motivations. I mean, talk to me now. Some scholars, after analyzing Columbus's will and other documents, have devised a new theory about the explorer. They believe he was a Marrano, or a Jew, who pretended to be Catholic to avoid religious persecution. Say it ain't so, Columbus. Say it ain't so. Why is this important? We finna find out. You know what I mean? But let's continue. I'm not going to click the link yet. They believe he was a Marrano, or a Jew who pretended to be Catholic to avoid religious persecution. He was doing the Flavius Josephus, okay? These historians also theorize that Columbus' main goal in life was to liberate Jerusalem from Muslim control. And he decided to take his historic quest to North America in order to find a new homeland for Jews who had been forced out of Spain. During the time of Columbus' voyage, Marranos were a targeted group. Tens of thousands of them were tortured during the Spanish Inquisition. So keeping one's true religious identity secret was a crucial priority for many. And it goes into the CNN report that we're also going to read. As CNN reports, Columbus will contain 5 provisions that some scholars believe to be evidence of the explorer's true faith. They're dropping a lot of knowledge right now. I had to go back and look at the Spanish Inquisition, look at the expulsion, look at the letter when it was drafted, look at what was the impetus, like they say, what were you running from? What was really going on, right? 2 of his wishes: tithe 1/10 of his income to the poor and provide an anonymous dowry for poor girls, are part of Jewish customs. He also decreed to give money to a Jew who lived at the entrance of the Libsyn Jewish quarter. On those documents, Columbus used a triangle signature of dots and letters that resembled inscriptions found on gravestones of Jewish cemeteries in Spain. He ordered his heirs to use the signature in perpetuity. According to British historian Cecil Roth, The History of the Marranos, the anagram was a cryptic substitute for the Kaddish, a prayer recited in the synagogue by mourners after the death of a close relative. Thus, Columbus's subterfuge allows his sons to say Kaddish for their crypto-Jewish father when he died. Finally, Columbus left money to support the crusade he hoped his successors would take up to liberate the Holy Land. Interesting theory. Scholars also point to the real financiers of the voyage, meaning when he sailed the ocean blue, as evidence of the trip's purpose. While most school children grow up learning that the expedition was financed by Queen Isabella, historians say it was mostly paid by 2 prominent Jews who had been forced to convert to Catholicism, Luis de Santangel and Gabriel Sanchez. While these claims may be difficult to verify, the new portrait of Columbus painted by these scholars adds a complicated layer to the already convoluted sentiment towards the famed explorer. While he is lauded in the United States with a federal holiday and receives a great deal of credit for discovering North America, his legacy has been tainted by charges of genocide and exploitation. But if Columbus's true intent was not imperialism but freedom from religious trial, public perception of the man may shift yet again. Okay. So this article written back in 2012 is saying that there are some scholars who are like, hold up, wait a minute. Columbus ain't who we thought he was. Okay. If he was a Sephardic Jew who was fleeing persecution, finding a new place to go makes sense. Okay. Let me go ahead here. Let me click on this right quick. Then we're going to go to the next article. Why is this important, Amuna? What does it matter? It matters a lot because now we're having these conversations over and over. Somebody says here, was Columbus secretly a Jew? Now, when you ask these questions, depending on who you are, you get called certain names. CNN asked the question a minute ago. Was Columbus secretly a Jew? Let me go ahead and drop this screen and pick up this screen. Hold on. We're not gonna go too fast. Sometimes people are like, yeah, I'm giving that knowledge, dropping it. And I'm like, slow down, bruh. Slow down. Where you running to? Was Columbus secretly a Jew? Okay. This Columbus bids farewell to his son Diego at Palos, Spain, before embarking on his first journey on August the 3rd, 1492. Same year, earlier that year, they was like, yo, you ain't gotta get out. We don't know where you about to go, but you gotta get up out of here. That's the same year. I don't want to jump around, but that's the same year that the Jews within the kingdom was expelled, and they had a certain amount of time to get out of town. It's either you were going to lay down or get out of town. right? And he seems to have gotten out of town just in time. Just in time. So let's go ahead and read. Let me see. Was he a Jew on this here? CNN article. Today marks the 508th anniversary of the death of Christopher Columbus. Everybody knows the story of Columbus, right? He was an Italian explorer from Genoa who set sail in 1492 to enrich the Spanish monarchs with gold and spices from the Orient. And then it says, not quite. When was this article written? This article was written in 2012 as well, May of 2012. For too long, scholars have ignored Columbus's grand passion, the quest to liberate Jerusalem from the Muslims. During Columbus's lifetime, Jews became the target of a fanatical religious persecution. Here we go. On March 31st, 1492, King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella proclaimed that all Jews were to be expelled from Spain. The edict especially targeted 800,000 Jews who had never converted and gave them 4 months to pack up and get out. So we're at April, May, June, July, August. August made 4 months that they had to get out, right? The Jews who were forced to renounce Judaism and embrace Catholicism were known as conversos or converts. They were also those who feigned conversion, practicing Catholicism outwardly while covertly practicing Judaism, the so-called Marranos or swine. Tens of thousands of Marranos were tortured by the Spanish Inquisition. They were pressured to offer names of friends and family members who were ultimately paraded in front of crowd, tied to stakes, and burned alive. Their land and personal possessions were then divvied up by the church and crown. Recently, a number of Spanish scholars such as José Ergo, Celesio García de la Rega, Ortelo Sanchez, and Nicolas Diaz Perez have concluded that Columbus was a Marrano. So we have these Spanish scholars here. Let me see how many we have. 1, 2, 3, 4. Have concluded that Columbus was a Marrano whose survival depended upon the suppression of all evidence of his Jewish background in the face of brutal systemic ethnic cleansing. A similar practice actually happened when many of the those of Jewish religious background came to America, that they hid behind, and I can go back and find some of the things that I came across in times when I'm researching, that they hid behind. They changed their names to have more European sounding names, and they became more secular Jews who did not outwardly appear to be Jews so that they wouldn't be persecuted, okay? Columbus, who was known in Spain as Cristobal Colon and didn't speak Italian, signed his last will and testament on May 19, 1506, and made 5 curious and revealing provisions. So he's like, man, forget that. I was, running, I was trying to staying alive. And now he was like, forget this. You understand what I'm saying? Oh, wait. Last will and testament, he gonna let it all out. He gonna let it hang all out. And we just read that in the other one, but we're gonna read it again. Sorry, I realized that I was moving the wrong one, so you guys wasn't seeing that 10. 2 of his wishes: tithe 1/10 of his income to the poor, provide an anonymous dowry for poor girls, are part of the Jewish customs. He decreed to give money to Jews who lived at the entrance of Lisbon Jewish quarter. On those documents, Columbus used a triangle signature of dots and letters that resemble inscriptions found on gravestones of Jewish cemeteries in Spain. He ordered his heirs to use the signature into perpetuity. According to British historian Cecil Roth, The History of Marranos, the anagram was a cryptic substitute for the Kaddish, a prayer recited in the synagogue by mourners after the death of a close relative. Thus, Columbus' subterfuge allowed his sons to say Kaddish. Well, the other article just wholly lifted the thing. You can't lift the whole thing, but anyway, for the crypto Jewish father when he died. Finally, Columbus left money to support the crusade he hoped his successors would take up to liberate the Holy Land. Interesting. Estelle Irizarry, a linguistic professor of Georgetown University, has analyzed the language and syntax of hundreds of handwritten letters, diaries, and documents of Columbus, and concluded that the explorer's primary written and spoken language was Castilian Spanish. Izari explains that the 15th century Castilian Spanish was the Yiddish of the Spanish Jewry known as Ladino. At the top left-hand corner of all but one of the 13 written letters by Columbus to his son Diego, containing the handwritten Hebrew letters Beit He, meaning Bezarat Hashem, with the Most High's help, observant Jews have for centuries customarily added this blessing to their letters. No letters to the outside bear this mark, and the one letter to Diego in which this was omitted was one meant for King Ferdinand. Was Columbus a Jew is the question that's being asked. Let me know if I could still be heard as we continue. In Simeon Weschenthal's book, Sails of Hope, he argues that Columbus's voyage was motivated by desire to find a safe haven for the Jews in light of their expulsion from Spain. Likewise, Carol Delaney, a cultural anthropologist at Stanford University, concludes that Columbus was a deeply religious man whose purpose was to sail to Asia to obtain gold in order to finance a crusade to take back Jerusalem and rebuild the Jews' holy temple. Very, very, very interesting stuff. In Columbus' day, Jews widely believed that Jerusalem had to be liberated and the temple rebuilt for the Messiah to come. Scholars point to the date on which Columbus set sail as further evidence of his true motives. He was originally going to sail on August 2nd, 1492. A day happened to coincide with the Jewish holiday of Tisha B'Av, marking the destruction of the first and second holy temples of Jerusalem. Columbus postponed this original sail date by one day to avoid embarking on the holiday, which would have been considered by Jews to be an unlucky day to set sail. Coincidentally or significantly, the day he set forth was the very day that Jews were by law given the choice of converting, leaving Spain, or being killed. Columbus's voyage was not, as is commonly believed, funded by the deep pockets of Queen Isabella, but rather by two Jewish conversos and another prominent Jew, Luis de Santangel. These are stuff to look up. And Gabriel Sanchez advanced an interest-free loan. Because, again, you're not supposed to lend on usury to your brother, right? Of 17,000 ducats from their own pockets to help pay for the voyage, as did Don Yitzchak Abrabanel, rabbi and Jewish statesman. Indeed, the first two letters Columbus sent back from his journey were not to Ferdinand and Isabel, but to Santa Angel and Sanchez, thanking them for their support and telling them what he had found. The evidence seemed to bear out a far more complicated picture of the man from whom our nation now celebrates a national holiday and has named its capital. Lastly, it says, as we witness bloodshed the world over in the name of religious freedom, it is valuable to take another look at the man who sailed the seas in search of freedoms, landing in a place that would eventually come to hold such an ideal at its very core. Interesting. For those who just joined us, welcome to the conversation. We are exploring the thought, was Columbus a Jew? What does that mean? So sometimes we're like, what does it mean? What does it mean? Like, first we start at the what, you know what I mean? Get yay or nay, Cain or low. And then we can go from there. So that's all I'm discovering right now or exploring. Let me know if I can still be heard in the box below. I got like 2 more articles and then I'm gonna leave it there. We'll let that simmer. When you cut up your ingredients in the pot, your onions, your garlic, your scallion and thing, you gotta let it simmer a little bit so that the aromatics could be released. You understand what I'm saying? So let's jump over here. Oh, wait, hold on. Share another. Because I was going to start off with the book and I was like, nah, because that's going to be a long undertaking. Let's do some primary stuff first so we can all be on one accord. Let me see. I read that article. Christopher Columbus. Yeah, let's get this. This is coming from JewishVirtualLibrary.org. Okay. This has been brought to you by, here we are, Christopher Columbus. So we have some, if I was going to dive off on the deep end, I would definitely look into the peoples that the article gave and that noted, because that definitely would give some insight. I don't know who would actually have those letters, but that would be interesting to look at the Hebrew on the letters. So when people were like, oh, he had a Hebrew interpreter, I bet he did. I bet he did. Christopher Columbus, 1451 to 1500, discoverer of America. Thought by some to have been of Marrano extraction. This is in Jewish Virtual Library, so they're aware that people are like, wait, hold up, Christopher. You know what I mean? We know who you are. Let's continue. He was himself mysterious when speaking of his origin. Apparently, especially if you coming from a place where it can be problematic if you let it all out. You understand? Apparently having something in his background which he wished to conceal, like I don't know, the block is hot. However, he boasted cryptically about his connection with King David and had a penchant for Jewish and Marrano society. Spanish scholars have attempted to explain the fact that this great hero of Spanish history was almost certainly born in Genoa, Italy, by the assumption that his parents were Jewish or ex-Jewish refugees from Spain. In fact, the name Colon or Colombo was not uncommon among Italian Jews of the late medieval period. A document recently discovered suggests that Columbus was a Majorcan origin and almost certainly belonged to a Marrano family, but the authenticity of the document still remains to be proved. On the other hand, Columbus' mysterious signature, which he adjured his son always to use, is susceptible to a Hebraic interpretation, which is no more improbable than many other solutions that have been proposed. It is remarkable, moreover, that Columbus began his account of his voyage with a reference to the expulsion of Jews from Spain, that in one document he refers to the Second Temple in Jerusalem by the Hebraic name Second House, that he dates its destruction as beginning in the year 68, in accordance with the Jewish tradition, and that he seems to have deliberately postponed the day of his sailing until August the 3rd. Okay, y'all just told us August 2nd, but okay. While all was ready for the purpose of the previous day, which was the unpropitious fast day of the 9th of Av, commemorating the destruction of the temple. The mystery regarding Columbus' origin is largely the outcome of his own mendacity, and as a result, it is equally impossible to exclude or to confirm the hypothesis that he was descended from the Jewish or ex-Jewish family. I mean, the facts are looking like, you know what I mean? You are the father, you know what I mean? That's what it's looking like. Maury, what are you saying, Maury? Maury's over here like the DNA test is, because why else, brother? Why so pushy? What's really going on here? The fact that he ultimately received the patronage of the Spanish sovereigns for his expedition was in large measure due to the enthusiasm and help of a group of new Christians around Aragonese court, notably Louis. So new Christians, meaning they had to convert or die, right? Luis de Santa Angel and Gabriel Sanchez, as well as, and this is Jewish Virtual Library saying the same thing that the CNN sources are saying. Interesting. As well as to some extent Yitzhak Abrabanel. It was in fact Santa Angel and Sanchez that Columbus wrote the famous account of his success on his return, which was immediately published and circulated around Europe in two recensions, one addressed to the former, the other to the latter. On his journeys, the explorer used the nautical instruments perfected by the Jews, such as Joseph Vesinocho. Hold on, I gotta drink some water. 1 second. I needed to drink some water. Hold on, let me get some fresh air. Hold on. 1 more second. I needed some water on that one. Sorry. Where are we? So he was using instruments that his Jewish brethren had perfected, and the nautical tables drawn up by Abraham Zacuto. It was formerly stated that several of the crew of this voyage, First George, was of Jewish birth. But this was in fact true of one, the interpreter, Luis de Torres, who had been baptized immediately before the expedition set sail. The motivations behind Columbus's travel were varied. Alongside Franciscan Jocamite traditions of the coming Third Age, Columbus had been interested for many years in biblical prophecies. He had collected them long before his first journey and later on as well. So, let me keep reading and I'm going to give my thoughts and you can give your thoughts. After his discoveries had verified his expectations, these prophecies are collected in the Libro de las Profecias, where he used well-known Catholic medieval authors. The Chalistic plans included not only the liberation of Jerusalem, but the establishment of the temple. The gold brought from the New World was supposed to serve for the coming crusade. Unlike his entirely negative attitude towards the Muslims, Columbus saw Jews and Jewish tradition in a more positive light as part of the religious quest of humanity. The discoveries of Columbus were echoed in Jewish sources, a collection of correspondence from the 16th century Italy. Biblioteca Laurentiana, MS, okay, they're giving the references, refers to the return of the second expulsion, that's 1496. A Hebrew translation of a book describing the discoveries in the New World was made in Voltaggio near Genoa in 1557, referring specifically to the New World found by Columbus, and then they give their references down here at the bottom. So these three articles right here are giving some very, very interesting references. I know I had one more. Let me see here. Yeah, it's saying the same thing that the other ones are saying. So let's get a close-up picture on old boy real quick, and then we'll let that marinate a little bit, because if we're going to go forward to this conversation, this sets the stage. Columbus and those who were backing him and the voyages sets the stage to the transatlantic slave trade. Sorry. Let's get an up-close look at your boy. You see them eyes? Shifty. He trying to tell us something. He's trying to tell us something. What you trying to tell us, Christopher? Look at Christopher's hands. Looking real suspect. He trying to tell us something. He's like, yeah, it's true. That's what his face is saying, ain't it? He's like, yeah, it's true. Believe everything you just heard. That's what he's telling me. He got the little shifty sideways eyes. So let's rewind a little bit, right? According to Jewish Library, CNN references, Huffington Post references, right? Columbus was leaning, okay? There was a lot of stuff going on at that time. A lot of times, we jump right into the slave trade, bam. But there's a pretext. There's something going on. There's a setting by which this whole thing is taking place, right? This is not the beginning of what's happening. There are things happening simultaneously. Hold on one second. Judah said that's a lot of information. It's looking like it's looking. He's like, it's a lot of information. So what he did, is what many people did at that time, which was hide their identity. The similar thing happened when I interfaced with some of the Beta Israel in Ethiopia. When they were under persecution and it wasn't advantageous to let the people know who you were, there were many who forcibly converted to Christianity. Okay. And so that was one of the things that I personally saw in conversation, that there were those who refused to convert and be absorbed into society. That's Beta Israel, and then those who did, which became Beta Abraham. So according to what this story is happening here, if we rewind the tape to 1492, you have some European or Spanish Jews or who are all up and through this European space. We can go and read a little bit about the expulsion. I think I'll do that another time. But it's the place is saying, hey, you got to get out. They got the eviction papers. Okay. He could have been toying with the idea aforetime. They're not like, oh, chill, we got to get out. And then, ooh, there were some discoveries that were made during this time that the Portuguese learned and through sailing, right? And through these discoveries and this technological advancements with sailing, they initially sailed down the coast from Portugal to Africa. And now I have to come back and they came down and they got bodies, and they sailed back to Africa. So in the beginning, the slave trade or the transporting of bodies weren't across like large bodies of water. It was them coming down onto the continent, into the West Coast, taking some bodies and taking them back and Europeanizing them and making them serve them there in Portugal. If you look at the Portuguese, who were 200 years deep into the slave trade before anybody else came on board, we will understand what was going on. So if Columbus is a Jew, which the articles are leaning and the scholars are leaning towards, and he was the one who discovered America, and he was the one who and they were the ones who had this technology for sailing, and they knew where they could get workers from. And he had in his mind that, according to what we just read, okay, that they were going to go back and rebuild the walls of Jerusalem and rebuild the temple. Then they understood that they would need a workforce. And given that they already had that interaction, then he would know exactly where he would get all of these people to go do the work. So when he went to go survey the land, and they ended up in Haiti, and they're looking for gold, I mean, I think the trip served more than one purpose. Okay, they needed a place to go, a new place to go. And if you're trying to take back Jerusalem from the Muslims, then you're going to need a lot of things. Okay, you're gonna need a lot of things. So this story gets really interesting. Let me know your thoughts. I'm gonna do one thing at a time so as not to overwhelm the discussion before we get over to the secret relationship, the Nation of Islam book. Before we get over there, we're just gonna go back in time a little bit and take a look at some of this stuff. Let me drop some of these articles in the box so that you can read them at your own discretion. Okay. And for those who are wondering what happened to the thing I was doing, I'm still waiting. Once I find out, they told me I had to wait a month. So I'm still waiting to see whether or not it's a scam or is it real. I'm dropping these links in the box. Queen T, what's going on? So this conversation about anti-Semitism, and I mean, all of that gets very interesting and sticky if the person who you credit with finding the New World was a Jew. That also means that he would have been well aware. He would have been well aware of what the Torah said. They would have been well aware of who is who. No? Let's go ahead. I'm trying to get... Here we go. So those are the articles that I read from. Yeah, those are the articles that I read from right there. And what I'm going to try to do when I have some time is look for some of these letters and see whether or not some of these letters are on some of these sites, because they were basically saying he was leaving cryptic messages. You know what I mean? At the end, he's like, forget it. You know what I mean? Here it is. Here I go. So then Columbus would have known exactly who was who. Like I said, I have to go back and get this first voyage. Hold on, let me just get this first voyage real quick. For those who just joined us, welcome to the conversation. I did the first part of the presentation. Drop the link in the box. There's so much in my mind, I can't. But I do know they started to sail. Poor. Hold on. Here we are. See? Amuna don't be making it up. Let me just get you this real quick. Let me drop this in the box. It take me a while to pull it back because there's just so many files in my mind. You know what I mean? So here is. Let's take a look at this real quick. So that I could put that other piece together. So during this time, right, it's already heating up over there, and they already know it's coming to a head. But at the same time, there are some advancements being made. There's some advancements being made as it relates to nautical advancements, right? So the Portuguese, this is from the Met. If you're in New York or anywhere close, check out the Metropolitan Museum of Art, okay? This is from the Met, all right? The Portuguese in Africa, 1415 to 1600, they were there, okay? Way before they started saying, I got a job for you. It's a remote location. Come with me. You know what I mean? Access to commodities such as fabric, spices, and gold motivated a European quest for a faster means to reach South Asia. It was this search that led the Portuguese down the coast of West Africa to Sierra Leone in 1416. Okay, so 30 years before homie sails the ocean blue, he's like, what, 10? They're like, ooh, what's going on down there? Due to several technological and cultural advancements, that's what I was talking about, Portugal dominated world trade for nearly 200 years. I just said that because they are the ones. That means 400 years, they had the whole slavery game on lock. They had all of the contracts, which they were contracts, Acentos de Negro contracts. They had the contracts. They owned the oceans. They were like, yo, nobody pass unless I say go. From the 15th to the 16th century, while the 15th century, the rest of Europe was decimated by the Black Plague, Portugal was protected by its physical isolation. Additionally, Portugal had an unusually strong national identity due to its natural geographical borders, allowing the pooling of the considerable economic resources necessary to fund these ambitious explorations. Additionally, Portugal extended contact with Islam and therefore with its superior mathematical knowledge and sailing technologies, including sail shapes, hull designs, and maritime weaponry, resulting in a Portuguese fleet capable of negotiating the high Atlantic seas. So let me get this straight. The Portuguese went to the Islam and was like, yeah. Tell me what happened now. Papa's to his what? A sailing ship. They go and learn the technology and then use the technology to enslave melanated people. And by the way, let me not get off. As a consequence, most of the West African coast was explored in the period from 1415 into 1600s. Preserved maps from this period show a remarkably accurate understanding of complicated coastline. African exports consisted primarily of gold, ivory, and pepper. However, more than 175,000 slaves were also taken to Europe. And the Americas during this period. So that like I was saying, before they started bringing bodies to the New World, they were just bringing them back to Portugal. And they were teaching them there and enslaving them there. In 1600, with the involvement of the Dutch and English, the magnitude of the slave trade grew exponentially. I'm going to go a little more here. From the time of their arrival on the shores of Sierra Leone in 1460 and until their gradual decline as a leader in world exploration in the 16th century, the Portuguese had an ambitious relationship with their African trading partners. So before, like I said, the transatlantic slave trade, it was the trial period. You know what I mean? It was the trial period before, and then they was like, yeah, we done met some people over there. We kind of know what's going on. It wasn't like, hey, where we gonna get these bodies from? They already started a relationship. Disembarking at cities that were as large, complex, and technologically advanced as Lisbon at the time, the Portuguese actually experienced far less culture shock than we might expect. In fact, they encountered urban centers in West Africa comparable to those back in Europe, governed by elaborate dynasties organized around apprenticeship based artistic guilds with agricultural systems capable of feeding their large populace. Many African cities were even deemed to be larger, more hygienic, and better organized. This is the Metropolitan Museum of Art saying this stuff, okay? Then organized than those of Europe. Additionally, the Portuguese shared many beliefs about magic, the supernatural, and the treatment of illness with the African societies they encountered. Protective amulets in both cultures were considered medicinally valuable, and sickness in general was attributed to witchcraft. And these are the articles, these are the essays that they reference, and this is the reference that they have here. I wanted to just share that because that's what I was making reference to, that there was already contact by the time Mr. Cristobal or Colon over here pops on the scene, crispy and clean. You understand? I don't know if he was that clean, but he popped on the scene. So with that said, we're going to just leave that right there. We're going to leave that right there because, things, I need to get a button that says things that make you go, Let me know if you have anything to say before I go ahead and wrap it up. I put all of the links in the box, and then we're going to pick it up from here. We're going to follow this little cookie trail here and see where it leads us. Because coming over here, wanting to rebuild the walls of Jerusalem, knowing prophecy, studying Torah, going into West Africa, you're going to tell me it never occurred to you that possibly these people we're going to go get, when you were writing letters to the king and telling them, hey, I found some Indians over here, I found such and such over here, when you were having these interactions, it never ever occurred to you that there's a possibility that these here people that we're bringing over here are not who we think they are? At least, at minimum, we know that they knew something because you had Bible in hand and you had Torah knowledge and you understood some things. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and leave that there. Let me see. Before I do leave that there, let me see. And we're going to come back at another time to continue to explore some of these things that make you go, Who used to say that? Oh, Arsenio Hall. Things that make you go, All right. With that said, everybody have a blessed day.